Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Bones131313 in a 5+5 game on chess.com. My opponent opens with e4. Let's play Caro-Kann. Okay, and bishop c4 on move 2. So a lot of people do this against non-e4, e5 openings, bishop's opening or Italian style, but against Caro-Kann, Sicilian, French defense, I wouldn't recommend it, because as you can see, white has to move the bishop again. Okay, I can play knight c6 here. I could also just play bishop d7 and look to develop after that. I'm going to play knight c6. I definitely don't mind if white takes and trades off their light square bishop for my knight. Okay, h3. So that kind of indicates to me that white is looking to prepare knight f3 and doesn't want to get pinned. I'm thinking about e5 here and being bold and taking the central space. But I'm going to play knight f6, just get one more piece developed. I think e5 was also okay. But yeah, let's just coordinate a bit more. Here I'm thinking about a6 or bishop f5. Bishop f5, knight e5, rook c8 looks fine to me. Yeah, I'm going to try to get the bishop outside the pawn chain, play e6 next. If knight d4, I would have dropped back to d7. Okay, now here, I have a typical idea I can think about. Queen a5 check. It would force white to play knight c3. But I don't know that I want my queen on a5 after that, so I'm just going to play e6. And I'm very happy with my bishop situation here. Okay, white just castles. Now I might play a6 to finally encourage white to do something about their bishop. So let's see what they want to do. If they want to trade, they do trade. And jump the knight into e5. So now I have the bishop pair. I'm pretty happy about that. Knight takes c6 is a threat. I could try to play c5 here and immediately trade my c-pawn for white's d-pawn. I do open myself up a little bit on this diagonal, so maybe queen c7 is more prudent here. Could definitely think about that. There might be some idea of white playing g4, but I think I can deal with that if it happens. I'm going to play queen c7 and go bishop d6 and try to castle kingside most likely. Okay, bishop f4. Let's play bishop d6. I don't want that bishop able to attack my queen if the knight does some sort of discovery. So bishop d6. g4 would have been very interesting on the previous move. I'm definitely going to check that in the postmortem. Okay, knight d2. So again, I can think about playing c5 here, looking to knock down that support for the knight on e5. This might be a good time to do it. Other moves that come to mind, just castles. Knight d7 maybe. Maybe even h6 if I want to give my bishop a place to drop back. But yeah, kind of leaning towards c5. I'm going to do it. White's played pretty fast so far. Yeah, and c3, kind of an automatic response. Now queen a4 check is available for white, so I think this is a good time to just castle the safety. And again, if white ever takes here, they're going to lose e5. So I'm going to keep the tension for a moment. I may take on d4 now that I'm castled and I'm not running into queen a4. Okay, knight to f3, knight d to f3. Rook b8 looks appealing here. Hit this pawn down on b2. Now white could be in a better position to take, so I should keep that in mind. I can play c4 here, try to squeeze white. That h6 move also looks kind of good, but I think I want to do something about this tension for the moment. So yeah, looking at this one, maybe followed by rook b8, although, might be nice to keep that tension. I mean, if I play rook a b8, let's say, and white takes here, I take with the queen. How do I like that? Knight d7 is not working for white. Knight d4, I feel like I can just drop the bishop back, or even take on b2. Let's do that. Yeah, attack this pawn down here. Okay, so I'm behind on the clock here. I spent some time on that move. Probably a little bit too long, 45 seconds on rook a b8. It's not that consequential of a move, so hope to speed it up a little bit. Okay, b3. Now that weakens the c3 pawn. I'm looking at maybe trying to target that knight e4. But first let's play h6. I feel like h6 is just super handy in these positions. Remove any back rank issue. Bishop can drop back. Yeah, d takes c5 I can still take with the queen. Don't think a whole lot has changed there. Okay, queen c1. I wonder if white is thinking about sacrificing here. Okay. I could try to put a stop to that with king h7, or I could take d4 and just trade the queens, or threaten to trade the queens. It would be interesting if white went ahead and did that. I'm going to play king h7 just to stop any bishop takes h6 ideas in its tracks. The only thing is I do prevent my bishop from coming back here, but I don't think white's going to play g4. And if white does play g4, I could play bishop g4, bishop e4 rather, or maybe just drop back to g6 is okay. Okay, but Bones playing pretty well so far. I didn't really like how they played that opening with bishop c4, but I'd say they've coordinated their position pretty well. I still have the bishop pair, but let's see what happens here. g4, bishop e4, g5 would be interesting. May not be sound. I can play bishop takes f3 for one thing. Yeah, let's play bishop e4 here and see how white responds. Bones is trying to take my head off here. I like it. Aggressive. So now I am threatening bishop takes f3. And if the knight comes back, bishop takes f4. Okay, so the knight leaves. Not a fan of moves like knight h2, because coordination-wise, not what white is looking for. I'm thinking about knight d7. Again, I'm thinking about trading on d4. Knight d7 might be a nice move, though, just to apply further pressure. I wonder if white's going to go f3. Could be a plan. Yeah, I think I like this move. Knight d7. And if knight takes, I can take f4. There is knight takes f8 check. I have rook takes f8. I'm hitting the queen. I'm also hitting h2 a couple times. So possible line for white to fall into. Now if f3, I could try to play bishop g6. And if knight takes d7, maybe even just queen takes d7, that line will be a little bit different. Okay, so white goes back to g3. So here it appears that I can win a pawn if I take thrice on e5. Yeah, get a little pinned up, but I think it's fine. Let's do it. White could play, for instance, rook e1 at the end of this variation, but then I'm going to move my queen. So go ahead and play this way. It's a nice pawn to win. Also, I got rid of some of the congestion in the center. White's outposted knight. Okay, now f4. Ooh, that really weakens white's king. So notice white already had pushed the h and the g pawns, and now white's pushing the f pawn as well. Bishop d4 check not working yet. I should probably just play bishop d6 here. Yeah, just briefly scanning if there's any alternatives that make sense. But now, let's do this. So now I think my target is going to be clearly white's king. I could try to play on the queen side a little bit more. I mean, maybe c4, opening bishop c5, or even f5. f5 looks pretty nice here. I like the look of this move. It's a super anchor for the bishop. Also, I could be looking to take, and then bishop takes f4 thereafter. Just going to try to play some quick natural moves. I feel very much in control of this situation. So I'm not going to hem and haw as to whether f5 was strictly speaking the best move, because it looks very good. Yeah, support that bishop. Okay, c4. So now I could just take, and I have 3 attackers on f4. White only has 2 defenders. d4 also makes some sense, but I think taking is just way more direct. And I'm going to try to crash through. Kind of tempting to take with a rook and play down the dark squares, but now a situation like this, already up a pawn, now going up 2 pawns. Could take with the queen, but I think I should play for the attack. White's king is so open. Don't always strictly have to trade, even though, you know, if you heard me talk about in chess fundamentals, and many of you may know this, if you're up in material, it usually makes sense to try to trade down. But I think given how open his king is, here I'm already threatening rook takes g4, pawn takes g4, queen g3. Ooh, and it looks like I will have a chance to do that. Now let's pause for a moment. Rook takes g4, check. H takes g4, check. H takes g4, queen g3, check. King f1 is forced, and then I have queen g2 mate. So I think this is already a mating sequence. The only other alternatives for white are to play here, here, but my pieces are going to be swarming. It was definitely risky for white to push the g-pawn, and white does resign. Thank you for the game, Bones. Yeah, it was definitely risky to push the h and the g-pawns, and I think f4, though, is the move that really got white in trouble. I mean, the position was already trending in my favor here, but f4 really puts white at risk of losing. You know, had white taken on e5, say we get a trade and played something like queen e3 or rook e1, it's still bad for white, but white has some hope here. But yeah, f4 I feel like is going to expose that king too much there. But even before that, you know, I think knight h2 going backwards here. I think if you're going to play this way, especially throwing the g-pawn forward, you probably got to look for ways to play g5 and attack. You can see I was trying to keep the tension for a while and slowly lay siege to this knight on e5. You know, often an outposted knight like that in the center, you will have to address at some point in the future, but I was taking care to maneuver, defend my bishop on d6, have this queen-bishop battery against e5, attack it 3 times. I guess I even have f6 after this. Didn't have to ever do that, but f6 was also an option. I guess I actually could have played f6 here. Would have been interesting. f6, knight takes d7, then bishop takes g3 with similar ideas in the game. They do have knight takes f8 there, rook takes f8, but actually that would be untouchable and the knight would be under attack, so that's also probably a very good line. But I just saw I could go up a pawn here with no risk in a good position, so I went for it. So I do wonder in the opening if maybe white had a chance to play g4, knight e5, and even h4. Like sometimes you do have to watch out for that in these circumstances. So let's say right here, for instance, after I played e6. I like how I've developed my pieces. It's a pretty idealistic development. But if white had played knight e5, attacking here, rook c8, and then g4, you do have to be cautious about this type of situation. Let's say bishop e4 hitting that rook, maybe f3, bishop g6, h4, and white can try to crowd this bishop. This would have got sharp. White doesn't have a whole lot of development on the queen side, no development on the queen side, but yeah, h5 is annoying. And if I play h6 here, white can take g6, and there's some damage to my structure. So I'm going to check that. Looks like a pretty clean bill of health from chess.com. 1 mistake, 0 blunders, 0 missed wins. Let's go to the analysis board. Okay, so Caro-Kann, c6, black preparing d5. The Caro-Kann and the French are pretty similar in my mind, you know, with both moves. Black is looking to play d5 on the second move. Of course, I like to dabble in the Scandi. Not even dabble, it's one of my main openings where I play d5 right away, but some people like to prepare that so you can take back with a pawn. So you see this a lot, you know. I have plenty of students who play the Sicilian, for instance, and it's just remarkable how often their opponents play bishop c4. Because I think a lot of people are stuck in the same mode that they play against e4, e5, where bishop c4, either on move 2 or, you know, say after knight f3, knight c6, makes a lot more sense because that diagonal for the bishop towards the weakest point on the board at the beginning of the game, f7, is unobstructed here. But if black hasn't committed that e-pawn forward, then I don't think that's a great strategy. And doubly so, if black is looking to play d5 and can achieve d5, I don't think bishop c4 is great. Yeah, this is called the Hillbilly Attack. I know Simon Williams has played this before, but he does it in gambit style, where he plays, I believe, bishop b3, and then if black takes here, he goes queen h5, and, you know, this is probably not sound, but could put black under pressure. So, yeah, I wouldn't really recommend bishop c4 approaches against the Sicilian, Caro-Kann, French. Same thing in the French. e6, bishop c4, d5. Black just gets to expand with tempo, with a gain of time on the bishop. So d4 is far better for white against both the French and the Caro-Kann. So here, and this is mainline theory, white can play e5. That's the advanced variation. White can play knight c3 or knight d2, just developing, keeping the tension, defending e4. White can take d5. There's even moves like f3. So lots of options here. So we got this trade and then a check. And again, bishop d7. Probably if we put the explorer on, there'll be a game or two. Okay, one game. Black played knight d7 in this position. I guess I'll throw on the computer already here. Pretty early in the opening. Yeah, bishop d7 would be completely fine. Look to trade and queen takes or knight takes. I mean, I think you can make an argument for queen takes here, even though knight takes is a developing move. Queen takes and maybe get the knight to c6. So I just played knight c6, though. I was kind of curious if I could somehow profit, even though I am putting myself in a pin, somehow profit from this later when I attack the bishop. I think it's also fine. Yeah, h3, probably unnecessary. I wasn't threatening to play bishop g4 or anything yet. White should probably just play d4. h3. Yeah, and I developed in maybe a little conservative fashion here. Knight f6, bishop f5. Like I did mention, e5. It seems like the computer likes that best. Just taking the center. But I was a little worried that the pawns would come under fire. You know, this pawn, for all intents and purposes, is undefended because the knight is pinned on c6. So didn't want to quite put it out there yet, but that would be fine too. Yeah, and I thought Bones played pretty well for these next several moves. I mean, bishop c4, h3 was kind of... I was questioning those moves, but I think Bones did well over the next several moves coming up here. Yeah, a6. Computer says just playing bishop d6 is a little bit better for me. So it's not majorly enthusiastic about this, but the evaluation is still about equal. Take, and then white played knight e5, attacking that pawn. And I just got my queen off the back rank and defended. Okay, so I was going to check if back here, instead of d4, right? Or maybe, yeah, maybe here, after e6, if knight e5 is worth considering. Knight e5 hitting this. Now I was mentioning rook c8, queen c7 is also given, and then g4. Computer says I should play here, and then what if h4? Okay, queen a5 check, followed by knight to e4. That's complicated, though. Check. And again, this move is always going to be met by knight c3, or it should be. Which you could argue is kind of bad for white, because white would probably prefer to put the pawn on c3, but yeah, this does defend the bishop. Yeah, this gets sharp, though. I mean, I'd have to calculate whether I can allow h5 in many cases here. Like, let's say, take on c6, b takes c6, h5. My bishop is running out of squares. Here, apparently, I can take, and this is good. I guess if bishop d2, I'm probably going to take on d4 and hit the knight, but complicated stuff. So I actually think if I were to do this over again, I would have taken the center, just played e5. Also, maybe not a6. a6 looks a little unnecessary that early. Probably would have been better off just playing bishop d6. Yeah, and I think Bones developed just fine through here, as I was saying. Still, I think a little bit worse for white. Just black having the bishop pair and the ability to start chopping down white's center. So, yeah, that being said, c4, computer likes here. Combative move. I think if I were white, I would have slowed down a little bit. They were still continuing to play very fast at this stage. So, I'd want to come out of the opening with maybe a bit better direction going forward if I were white. So, yeah, c4. Maybe not the first move that comes to mind, but it creates a ton of tension in the center, and queen a4 is lurking. So that may have been an interesting try. White played c3, I castled. Yeah, knight f3. So again, g4 is possible here. g4. I could take here, and then remove one of the defenders and actually play this if I wanted. Interesting. So white played knight df3, I played rook ab8. Yeah, looks fine, keeping the tension here. And now I played h6. Okay. Not in the top 3 moves that the computer likes, but I was mentioning this as being generally a constructive move for black in these positions. And again, I was alluding to g4 followed by h4 ideas, so it was just nice to have this square on h7 able for my bishop to drop back to. But the computer likes knight e4 here, attacking that pawn. I thought white would just respond with rook c1 if I did that. But then here, f6. Okay. I didn't connect knight e4 with f6, so kicking the knight. Yeah, that would have been a much better idea. And white is losing a piece here, it seems. Unless they play something wild like g4, which looks bad. But yeah, point is, if the knight moves, I can take here, and I've got it backed up by the queen. So I did something similar later when I played knight d7, but maybe I could have put that into practice a little bit sooner here. Yeah, knight e4 looks strong. And then queen c1. And this move to me just screamed bishop takes h6. And I was behind on the clock at this point. I wasn't sure that bishop takes h6 would be sound. Usually that sacrifice is not sound. But let's just say hypothetically I do this. and bombs away. My knight would be under attack. White may be looking to play knight g5 next. I wasn't relishing the prospect of having to find a defense here. Knight e4, I guess, is what the computer likes. Looks a little bit open. So I thought king h7 seemed reasonable. Strictly speaking, not the best move, but yeah, it looks okay. Just reinforce h6. But undoubtedly, it's a slight concession for me because I don't have h7 for my bishop anymore. Yeah, and now White's next couple of moves. I mean, I really believe if you're going to play g4, you've got to follow it up pretty aggressively because, yeah, I played bishop e4, threatening bishop takes f3. I felt like g5 was kind of the critical move, but maybe I can just take on f3 against this. Also, the engine likes knight h5, but I think taking on f3 probably would have been my answer because if knight takes, I can take f4. And if check, I can even block here. And if White plays a capture on f6 instead, I think I can play just g takes back. And the knight is still able to come back and capture, but I'll take f4. And if queen c2, I can play bishop e4. I also have rook g8 coming. So this looks really good. Computer says this is basically winning for black. So I think g4 was overambitious for White. White got overextended. But I can see why White played that. It's just, again, if you're going to play moves like that, I feel like your follow-up has to be more consistent with attacking versus suddenly trying to pull back here with knight h2. I don't think your attack is going to work out if you're doing that. I believe that White saw the threat of bishop takes f3, and that's what prompted this move. But got to be consistent with those attacks. So what else could White do instead of g4? I mean, it's looking kind of worse here. Guess maybe I'd consider moving this bishop to, at some point, be able to do something with this knight safely without having to constantly worry about bishop takes f4. The engine wants to take. Although I always felt like this would help me attack that pawn on c3. Maybe future doubling of the rooks. Probably use this rook. I would also, yeah, consider moving the bishop or maybe getting the queen off the back rank. So g4, bishop e4, knight h2. That's funny. The engine wants me to play king g8 or king h8 here. Interesting. I played knight d7. I was pretty happy about this. One line I looked at, I mentioned during the video, if knight takes d7, I can play bishop takes f4, allow knight takes f8 check in between move. But this is a gorgeous winning position for black because I'm on the queen and I'm threatening bishop takes h2 checkmate. So if the queen moves, that is mate. Death by bishop pair. Not a fun way to go. So that was an impetus for playing knight d7, one of the lines. White could play f3, yeah. And I was thinking about just playing bishop g6 if White did that. Maybe some line like this being possible. Take, f takes. I like f takes to open the rook file. Take, and this felt better for me, especially with this knight having no scope. No squares to jump to. Black's a lot better here, according to the engine. But yeah, bishop g3, and I just banked the pawn. Looks like f6. Yeah, f6, possibly even stronger. Much more dynamic way to play it. Pretty cool idea. Again, the effect of the bishop pair. I can allow this, but pretty amusing position with that threat. I guess there is f4. I didn't see f4 initially. f4, and now the engine wants to go g5 and really open it up. Okay. Further try to pry open this long diagonal. That would be a fun position. I can see why black is winning here. But knight takes e5, I think totally fine under the circumstances. Yeah, and I was criticizing this move. You can see it does jump the eval, but it's tough already for White. I think the damage has been done here, but yeah, f4 doesn't do White any favors. And unless you're attacking with these pawns, you're just weakening your king. So I brought the bishop back. Hard for White to do a whole lot here. Yeah, f5, get further pieces involved. And looks like White might have overlooked the threat, but even seeing the threat, hard to defend unless White wants to play the rook back to f1 in preparation for this. And I might even throw in g5 somewhere. Yeah, top move of the computer again, g5. Threaten to take and take f4. Black's having all the fun here. Yeah, we got this trade. And now it's forced checkmate. Rook takes g4. So one line I was mentioning is if takes, the queen comes in. All these squares are blocked off. White can't legally go to any of these squares. Notice the bishop on e4 guarding h1. So king f1, queen g2 mate. The only other move would be moving the king, but like I said, my pieces are swarming in. If king f1, apparently queen h2 is the quickest way to win. Again, threatening queen g2 mate, threatening rook g1 mate, rook f8. Even this rook could get involved for good measure, if absolutely necessary. Totally winning. Okay, so that was a fun game where white got a little overextended after g4 and then a lot overextended after f4. Not bad in the middle game by Bones, but I would slow down. I mean, they were playing very quickly there. They gave up the bishop pair, I think, without really thinking about it too much. Did okay with their pawn structure until g4 and f4 really started loosening their position. Again, if you're going to go all out like that, I think you got to commit and play something like g5 or have g5 in mind after that. Even though in this case, it looks like that wouldn't have been good either. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be back again soon with another one. Bye, guys.